fucking immediately with a car.
I know. Take the opportunity to do this.
Yeah, I think we're good. Welcome, one and all, to the No Experience Podcast, where two dudes who don't know how to come up with intros are here to talk about anything and everything. I'm Ammar Abdullah, and I'm joined, as always, by my luscious co-host, Jared Hines. And today, I'm so glad that Jared's here with me, because this is an episode about him. So join us as we dive deep into the heart of darkness to discuss the life and times of one Jared Hines.
What's up? I'm Jared. I'm 20 years old. I'm 5'11", but in my heart, I'm 6 foot. I like long walks on the beach, titties, and Rick and Morty. Go ahead and swipe right.
What an introduction that is. Holy shit. So, ladies and gentlemen, to give a bit more of an in-depth explanation as to what this episode is, we realized very quickly that we never explained who we are. We're out here hosting a podcast and never explained who exactly Jared Hines is and who exactly Ammar Abdullah is. So these next few episodes are going to dive into that. We're gonna talk about who I am, who he is, and how we came to be together in a small closet in Boise, Idaho.
Yeah, so Ammar and I actually met each other in high school. I think we've brought it up before, but we met. He was a year above me. I was like a sophomore. He was a junior, and we were kind of close in high school, but we got closer after we graduated. I would say.
Yeah, definitely. I seem to recall like seeing Jared we were in men's choir together. That was the thing that connected Jared and I. I seem to recall seeing him in my men's choir and being like, who's this fucking yokel? You know, he's got long hair and he's buff, you know, he's a real Adonis type. And I'm like, I don't know. At the time, it wasn't like I didn't like him. It was just, you know, I didn't connect with him quite yet. But all that would change when, you know, we started hanging out after I graduated, and we just got so close.
Yeah.
Both physically and metaphorically. Yeah, I really do mean close. I'm in his ass right now.
But
we're spooning.
Unironically speaking, he's seen my penis.
I have seen his penis. I don't know if he's ever seen my penis.
I've kind of seen your penis. We've talked about this on the podcast before, but when you when you went on Snapchat and edited somebody else's face on your...
Yes, I remember this. We did talk about this. I took a dick pic and edited one of our other choir boys' faces onto the tip of my penis.
So I've seen like 3/4 of your dick.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great picture. I wish every day that I could, you know, put it as the thumbnail for the podcast, but I feel like that would get us removed.
Yeah, somehow I feel like that does not satisfy the terms and conditions on YouTube.
Not that I would know. So Jared, this episode is about you. It's really all about you. I have some questions that I'm going to pose to you, questions that perhaps some of our viewers might have as well, about, you know, who you are, you know, what you've done, and, you know, what terrifying conflux of factors must have been there to create, well, whatever you are now.
Cool.
Very good. So just give us a brief, just something in brief. Who is Jared Hines?
Yeah, I'm Jared Hines, and I don't fucking know. How do you introduce yourself, you know?
I could tell you how I'd introduce myself.
Shut the fuck up. I'm introducing myself.
Okay, go ahead.
How does one even introduce themselves, right? Like, how do you even begin to explain all of your individuality, all of yourself in a short blurb? And I think I'm going to begin to attempt that with the fact that I'm severely mentally ill.
Yes, that it tends to be the through line that connects Jared and I more than anything else. Our interest in video games, music, television, movies, whatever. All that stuff connects us at a base level. But at a much deeper level, Jared and I are connected in the fact that we're both just basket cases.
We've got brain broke.
Yeah, broke brain for the both.
Come back later.
Okay, so that's pretty good. So delve into that. When you say mentally ill, what do you mean?
I mean, like, I am diagnosed mentally ill. I've got ADHD, a major depressive disorder. I was diagnosed with substance abuse disorder, which I didn't even know was a thing.
That's news to me.
Yeah. Back when I first started going to counseling, when I was like 13, I was diagnosed with dysthymic disorder and social anxiety disorder. And my counselor at the time was originally sending me to get tested because he thought I was on the spectrum. And I think about that every day.
Wouldn't that be fun, to discover after all these years that you've been riding on the autism spectrum and didn't even know?
I would be extremely pissed off because that would be the second time something like that has happened. Because back then there was also signs that I had ADHD, but they didn't give me the diagnosis. So I didn't get the diagnosis until my senior year of high school. And that's when I started getting medicated. I was like, fuck!
Yeah, all this time I haven't been operating at peak efficiency. I could have been, an average person instead of a below average one.
I swear to God, the only reason that I graduated high school was because of Adderall. I graduated over the summer with like a 2.0 something GPA.
Okay, so it's, below average, right? But I was also below average, so, that's fine. But Adderall's a magic little pill, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that tells us a little bit in broad strokes about who Jared is. He's a cool dude with just a host of mental illnesses. Some of them I didn't even know existed. So let's talk a little bit about your childhood. Let's talk about your upbringing. What would you say you had a good childhood?
Well,
that's your silence speaks volumes.
Yeah, so okay, listen. I was never abused or neglected or anything. But I grew up out of the aftermath of what my older siblings went through. I'm the youngest child of my siblings.
Of how many siblings?
I have 2 siblings, so 3 of us in total. They grew up with my dad when he was a severe alcoholic and he was abusive. Post-military and everything, and they had to deal with a lot of that. They had to deal with a whole lot of, just living to survive.
Sure.
Rather than trying to flourish in your growth as a child and everything. I grew up at the, very later ends of that. So most of what I got was, a very chilled-out father, a mother who didn't have to feel like she had to protect her kids at any given moment.
The youngest child syndrome, where the youngest child gets all the love.
Yeah, that too.
Sure.
But I grew up in a household where, my mother is mentally ill, so as well.
Sure.
So she always did the best to make sure that we could survive. And she did her best to get, presents for Christmas and stuff like that. But I think that combined with the fact that I was a very difficult and stubborn child meant that there were certain things in my life that kind of suffered. And that is no goddamn fault of my mother's. She did her absolute best.
Of course.
But one of the things that I struggled with as a kid was getting into hygiene habits.
Sure.
And I was such a little bitch about it. I refused to brush my teeth or take showers at any given turn, any opportunity. I just I pushed back so hard.
I wonder how many kids struggle with that. I wonder if that's a rare thing or if it's pretty common.
I have no idea. All I know is that nowadays I still struggle with hygiene a lot. It's a lot better than it was, but I still don't have hygiene habits. I have to make a concerted effort, and those are only generally on days when I'm going to be going out or socialize with people.
Right, so hygiene's a conscious decision for you rather than habitual.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I'm still trying to fix that up and everything, but yeah, it's still a long ways off.
Yeah, I guess it sounds like truly the habit you developed was not performing hygiene rather than performing it. And I've heard many times that it only takes 3 repetitions to create a habit. It takes like 17 to break it. So, that does speak, that speaks to the fact that it's hard to establish that as like a habitual thing that you do every day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it sounds like you had kind of a strange childhood, kind of a bizarre sort of set of circumstances. How do you think that's informed who you grew up to be?
Well, I mean, one of the things, just as a smaller, I guess I would say upside, is that I don't give a shit if I'm going over to somebody's place and it's like a mess or whatever. I kind of grew up in worse. So it's like messes have never really impacted me.
Sure.
But that is also kind of like a downside, because I tried to tell that to somebody, and I'm trying to get better about this now. But like, whether or not I'm cool with it does not change whether or not they're going to be insecure about their own mess.
Sure.
So if I'm like, hey, you ain't got to worry about this mess. Fucking whatever. I walked around in dog shit for years, literally, but that doesn't change the fact that like, this is not what they want for themselves. They don't like this, and they don't like people seeing them or their environment like this.
Sure.
So at the same time, while understanding mess and, being okay with it, I'm also now trying to come to understand better, like, people's insecurity about their messes, and understanding that there's a boundary there that I need to respect.
That's fair. That's great, actually. I think that a lot more people could stand to have that mentality about messes, about people's personal chaos in their own lives. That's great. I like that. So that's enough as far as the childhood shit is concerned. I want to talk more about the man that you've grown into. So in terms of like passions, right? Like what kind of hobbies do you have? What kind of things are you super passionate about that you think are like things that you might define yourself by?
Obviously, D&D. This has been brought up a lot in the podcast.
It will be brought up a lot more in the podcast.
D&D is a huge part of our lives.
Oh, yeah.
Ammar's the one that introduced it to me. It served a very, very critical part in my life. And I talked a little bit about it in the episode with Cyrus.
Yeah, the bets episode.
Yeah. When I started doing D&D was also around the time that I started consistently doing counseling. And my counselor helped me realize that there's always like this part of me and what I'm going through in whatever character that I've made to play.
Sure.
So at the time when I was playing D&D and we'd like discovered this was my first ever D&D character. His name was Speed. Speed was a hardcore addict. Like, he drank and he smoked and he snorted whatever the fuck he could find. One time a dragon got eviscerated into ash and he snorted the ashes.
Yeah, I remember thinking it was bizarre when it happened, but being like, I took it as like a laugh. I took it as like a funny thing.
Yeah, you even gave Speed a thing. He got more powerful out of that.
Yeah. I guess that's what happens when you snort dragon ashes.
Yeah. But at that time, I was drinking a lot. And it was getting to the point where I was on the path to alcoholism. Thankfully, I had an example in my life that I could compare to and the effects of that, so that maybe I shouldn't do this, maybe I should curb this shit. And I did. I managed to do that. It was not quite as gentle or easy as I'm making it sound, but I did it. So thankfully I'm a lot more conscious about my drinking now. But
sure.
My struggles with substance abuse had made its way into my character without me even knowing it. And since then, it has always been a thing for me to consciously look upon my characters to see what I have subconsciously instilled upon them, because oftentimes there's a lot of very important information to me instilled within them.
Sure. So Dungeons and Dragons, right? So role-playing games in general. I don't know if you've played anything else beyond Dungeons and Dragons.
Not as of yet. So far, it's just been D&D, and that's worked for me.
Yeah, man, it does. It works for a lot of people. A lot of people seem to like that one better than others. We'll get you at a table to play a different one sometime, but not right this minute. Okay, so you would say that's kind of your biggest hobby, right? You would say that's kind of the thing that you do the most?
Yeah, probably.
Right on. I appreciate that. I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons a long time as well. So let's talk personal philosophy. Something that I find will tell you more about people than anything else is what their personal philosophy is. So what's like your philosophy? What's like a code of ethics or morals or just thoughts that you live by, Jared? What would you say is the baseline from which you derive most of the way you see the world, your perspective?
I find this an interesting question, because oftentimes I look at my philosophies and what I believe in, and I'll find say inconsistencies or problems, and that makes me question a lot of that oftentimes. So it's constantly changing and rearranging and stuff little by little. But if you wanted the biggest ones that I would say inform me the most, I'm actually a Christian. I wasn't always Christian. It was more of a recent development, junior year of high school.
I seem to recall the time when you began to find your faith.
Yeah. And I don't really spend a whole lot of time reading the Bible. It's not a huge part of what informs my faith, though it did serve a part in a very different way. My faith was informed by this image that came up in my mind one day, that I'm not going to expand upon here because I feel like it would waste too much time for too little. I'm just going to go into the principles that I have extracted from my faith.
Okay.
Which is basically a shit ton of love. Love is a big part of life for me. I love to love, as cheesy as that fucking sounds.
No, and he does. You're not joking. I mean, you, more than anybody I know, make sure that you say I love you anytime you leave a room, anytime you get off the phone with somebody. You're very consistent about it.
It's very important to me. And on that note specifically, it's very important for me that the last thing that I say to somebody before, I'm leaving them is I love you in case anything happens to them, which has become especially important to me recently with some stuff that has come up with my father.
Which you can delve into if you want or not.
Not right now. Philosophies.
Yes.
So love is very important to me. I love the people I love very deeply. And I even love people that I don't really know a fair bit because I feel that they are deserving of love, even if I don't know them, even if they're not a part of my circle. And I want to show them that love.
Sure.
There is an inconsistency with this in that there are some people that I don't think I could ever bring myself to love, particularly sexual offenders. I just do not have it in my heart, period.
That's fair.
You hear a lot about how, Christianly unconditional love and shit. I don't have the heart for that.
Well, God loves unconditionally, right? According to the faith, right? So God loves unconditionally, but that doesn't mean you have to.
Yeah, I have conditions. And there are certain lines with me that you just cannot cross. There are hard lines that you cannot cross. There are people, you, who I've known for, who knows how many years at this point, like 6 years?
It has to have been at least 6 or 7, yeah.
Yeah. If you were to cross that line, say, and become a sexual offender, we wouldn't be friends anymore. I would drop you immediately.
That's
and
fair.
You would be lucky if I didn't beat the shit out of you.
And you should. And frankly, let me respond by saying that of most people you have to worry about that with, I'm probably very far down the list because I'm a sexual assault victim. So I would be very unlikely to I'd be very unlikely to cross that barrier, but I can see why that would be a barrier. That like that's the line you don't cross.
Yeah. To clarify for the audience, I'm just using Ammar as an example. I don't actually believe he would ever do anything like that. For
No.
obvious reasons.
For obvious reasons, quite obvious.
But yeah, unconditional love. That was a lot for one little principle.
No, but it really is important because that informs the way you see the world, right? Everything about your perspective and your worldview is informed by your personal philosophies.
Yeah. I would say that's the most core of my principles. There's some other ones like I think for something that I just operate off of, not something that maybe everyone should do, but I believe in like respect right off the bat with everybody, just giving a baseline of respect unless they pull something and they lose that respect.
Sure.
If you do some shitty shit, you're not going to get my respect. But
that's fair.
Otherwise,
that's a good standard.
Yeah, I'm always going to give people respect if I don't know them. And this used to be a problem rather than a principle. I used to give a lot to people and spend a lot of myself giving unto them because I grew up around a lot of mentally ill people. It was one of those things where usually if somebody didn't respond, it was because like they were having a bad time. They were not in a safe place. They had the barrel of a gun in their mouth, something like that. So if they didn't respond, it was something to worry about.
Sure.
So I got into a lot. I got really used to doing a lot for people, including, spending all my money as gifts to help just brighten their mood a bit, or walking from one end of town to the other just to visit them, say hello, make sure they're okay.
And he would. I remember one time you came over to my house and we had some booze. We did some drinking. And for whatever reason, it worked out that I was not allowed to have you stay over that night. And you just, picked up and walked all the way home, and you would do that for your friends. I would never expect you to do that now, right? Or if I would, I'd walk with you so you didn't have to walk by yourself. But yeah, no, that was a consistent thread in your life for a long time, I think.
Yeah. It got to the point where it was affecting me super negatively. So I've had to set a lot of boundaries for myself, but it's still something that I do. I just find a way to do it without it affecting my health.
That's wise. It's quite wise. Well, we're getting a little long here. So I think before we wrap up, Jared, is there anything, any quotes, any tidbits of wisdom, anything you want to share with the people that has been quite important to you, or that you think needs to be said in regards to who you are as a person before we wrap up here?
Yeah, actually, when it comes to like things to quote, going back on Christianity, one of the things that I did get from the Bible was a specific line from Psalms, and it varies depending on translation, but the basic translation that I've gotten is the counsel of a good friend is as sweet as incense, which was very important to me. I found that at a time when I really needed my friends in my life more.
Sure.
And needed their shoulders. Something else is, so I thought that this line was from a book known as Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, great book. But I've went to look for it and I haven't been able to find it. So I don't actually know exactly where this is from. But the quote goes basically, everything is perfectly preserved within the sands of time. That was especially important to me because I have a very deep-seated fear of forgetting, specifically forgetting the things that are important to me.
Sure.
So for me, that means that, like, even if I forget, those things are never truly forgotten because they happened, they exist, and they are preserved forever within time. That said, I can see how that idea can make somebody feel worse, depending on what they went through. There are some things that you don't want preserved.
Yeah.
In which case, I want to instill I want to mention that it's just some goofy, cheesy line, philosophy garbage.
Yeah.
There's no implicit meaning in this line. There's no God-given anything to this, It's just words.
Words written by men. And they're words that helped you, but they might not be words that need to be helpful to anybody else. The most important thing is to find whatever words help you.
Yeah. Aside from that, I don't think I have anything specific to quote. I don't think I have any specific stories or details to tell about myself. I think the one thing I would leave off saying is everything's going to be okay.
It'll work out in the end. It will work out.
And I don't know you, but as long as you're not a rapist or something, I love you.
All right. Well, that's as good a stopping place as any. That's a high note to end on. Well, everybody, we want to thank you so much for listening to the No Experience podcast. This pair of episodes are very deeply personal to Jared and I think. It feels good to get these out in the world. And if even one person hears them and is moved by them and hears our story and finds them compelling, you know what? That makes the whole thing worth it. So we want to encourage you guys to give us a like and a subscribe here on YouTube. It really does help us out to grow our audience. We also have a Facebook page you can follow us at the No Experience Podcast on Facebook. You can follow me, Ammar Abdullah, on Twitter at the Dongan Man. Links to all that will be in the description box. Stay healthy, everybody. Thanks so much for listening.
Yeah, bye.